And just in at noon, the Supreme Judicial Court issuing an opinion in the 2020 Department of Justice probe into the Springfield Police Department. The SJC began investigating the Hampden District Attorney following the 2020 DOJ report critical of the Springfield Police Department's narcotics unit. Now, in their findings, the SJC says that the Hampden D.A.'s office did not do enough in discovery to disclose the evidence that showed that someone may not be guilty of any wrongdoing. Now, we have reached out to the Hampden District Attorney's office for comment, and we're waiting to hear back.